Lily Montgomery stood silently in the corner of the grand dining room, the soft chatter of her relatives drifting around her. The long, polished oak table was filled with her father's side of the family, uncles, aunts, cousins, all dressed in their finest clothes for Sunday dinner. Yet, despite the warmth of the family gathering, Lily felt like a ghost. An invisible presence, unnoticed, unimportant. Her father, once a kind man, now seemed distant, a shadow of the father she had once known. He sat at the head of the table, the faint lines on his face betraying years of bitterness and regret. But Lily had learned to live with that. She had learned to accept the cold indifference that her father had developed toward her over the years. At the age of 8, Lily's mother had passed away unexpectedly. It was a devastating blow, one that had torn their small family apart. In the years that followed, her father had grown increasingly distant, and Lily's place in the family had become smaller and smaller until she was nothing more than a forgotten child in a house full of strangers. Her mother, Sarah Montgomery, had been her only support. She was the one who had taught her how to read, how to dream, how to love. But when her mother died, Lily was left to fend for herself in a family that had no room for her. The whispers and the stares from her father's side of the family made it clear Lily was not welcome. She was a reminder of a past they wanted to forget. The child of a woman who had once been a part of their family, but had been cast aside. Lily's aunts and uncles looked at her with thinly veiled disdain, their eyes flicking away as if she were nothing more than an inconvenience. Her cousins, who had once been her playmates, now treated her like an outsider. They were all close-knit, bonded by their shared bloodline, while Lily was an orphan in her own home. Her father's silence was the worst of it. He never spoke of her mother, never acknowledged the pain Lily carried, and most painfully, never told her that he loved her. As she stood in the corner of the room, Lily felt the familiar pang of loneliness settle in her chest. She had learned to smile, to laugh along with the jokes, to play her part as if she were part of the family. But deep down, she knew she didn't belong. She never would. Lily's thoughts were interrupted by the clink of silverware on plates as dinner began. The rich aroma of roast beef and vegetables filled the room, but Lily's stomach turned. She wasn't hungry, not for food, not for the empty conversation that followed. She simply wanted to escape, to retreat to the solitude of her room where no one would look at her with pity or scorn. "Lily, pass the gravy," her Uncle Charles called across the table, his voice cold but polite. Lily snapped to attention, her heart racing. She forced a smile onto her face, picking up the gravy boat and walking slowly to her uncle. She handed it to him, feeling the weight of his gaze on her. There was no warmth in his eyes, only a faint look of disdain, as though her presence were an inconvenience. "Thank you, dear," he muttered, barely glancing at her before returning to his conversation with the others. Lily turned quickly and returned to her place, her pulse still pounding in her ears. She sat down, feeling the coldness of the room settle over her once more. She tried to focus on the conversation around her, but the words felt like they were coming from another world, one where she didn't belong, one where she was invisible. Her father, seated at the head of the table, smiled faintly at one of his brothers. "So, how's work going, Thomas?" he asked, his voice casual, indifferent. Her father hadn't asked her how she was in years. The last time he had shown any interest in her life was when her mother had been alive. Since then, it was as if she had ceased to exist in his eyes. As dinner continued, Lily tried to lose herself in the rhythm of passing dishes, refilling glasses, and smiling at her relatives. But the weight of their indifference bore down on her, making it harder and harder to breathe. Every laugh they shared, every inside joke they made, felt like a reminder that she wasn't part of this family. They didn't love her, didn't care about her. To them, she was just the daughter of a woman they had long forgotten. After dinner, as the family lingered around the table, Lily made her escape. She excused herself quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, and slipped away from the dining room. She didn't look back, didn't bother to hear the soft chuckles of her cousins or the murmurs of her aunts and uncles. She just wanted to be alone. Lily walked down the long, dimly lit hallway toward the staircase. She had learned to navigate the house like a shadow, moving silently, avoiding the eyes that didn't look at her. As she reached the stairs, she paused for a moment, her hand resting on the railing. The house was silent now, the clatter of dishes and the hum of conversation fading into the distance. She climbed the stairs slowly, one step at a time, feeling the weight of the years pressing down on her. She had spent so many nights in this house, lying awake in her small, lonely room, wondering why she wasn't enough. Wondering why her family had never accepted her, never cared for her the way she had hoped. When she finally reached her room, she closed the door softly behind her and collapsed onto her bed. The tears came without warning, hot and heavy, flowing down her cheeks. She let them come, let the grief and the pain of all these years wash over her. She had never truly grieved her mother's death, not like this. She had buried her emotions deep inside, too afraid to let anyone see how much it hurt. But now, in the privacy of her room, Lily allowed herself to feel it all, the abandonment, the loneliness, the years of being overlooked and forgotten. She cried until there were no more tears left, until her body trembled with exhaustion. As she lay there in the darkness, a thought crossed her mind, a thought that she had never allowed herself to entertain before. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a way out of this. A way to prove to herself that she was more than the forgotten child, more than the shadow in the corner of the room. Maybe one day, she could make them see her. But for now, all she could do was cry and dream of a life where she was seen, where she mattered. Lily lay there, the weight of the tears still hanging in the air. The quiet of the room wrapping around her like a thick blanket. The walls, once comforting in their familiarity, now seemed suffocating. The shadows in the corners of her room seemed to grow longer, as if they too were aware of her pain, stretching out to claim her, to remind her that she was alone. Her thoughts wandered, tangled in memories of her mother. She had been so young when Sarah had passed away, only 8 years old, but the image of her mother's gentle smile and soft voice was etched in her mind as clearly as ever. Sarah had been everything to her, the constant in a world full of uncertainty. The love her mother had given her was the only thing that had ever felt real. But it had all been taken away so suddenly. And with it, any hope she had of ever truly fitting in. There were nights, many nights, when she would sit alone in this very room, staring out of her bedroom window at the stars, wondering if her mother had seen the same stars from wherever she was. She would imagine her mother's soft laughter, the warmth of her touch, and she would ache with a longing so deep it felt like a physical pain. But those nights had been rare, fleeting moments of weakness in a life that had taught her to be strong, to hide her emotions, to push through the pain. Lily wasn't a child anymore. She had grown up, adapted to the coldness of her family, and learned to survive in their presence without asking for anything in return. But tonight, as the last remnants of her tears dried on her pillow, a part of her felt like the little girl who had lost everything. A part of her wanted to scream, to demand answers from the people who had cast her aside, to demand an explanation from her father, from her aunts, from her uncles. But that part of her had been buried so deep, so far down beneath the surface, that she couldn't find the words. She knew it wasn't possible to change them. Her family's cruelty, their rejection, their indifference, it wasn't something that could be fixed. It had become a part of her world, a part of her existence. Still, a flicker of defiance stirred inside her, a quiet voice that whispered, "What if you don't need them? What if you can prove to them, to yourself, that you're enough without their approval?" Lily sat up, wiping the last traces of her tears from her cheeks. She stared at her reflection in the mirror across from her bed, her tired eyes staring back at her. She had never allowed herself to dwell on what could have been, but for the first time, she wondered what her life might look like if she chose to walk away from the shadows of her family. She didn't want their approval anymore, she realized. She didn't need to be their child. The thought was liberating. She didn't know what her future would hold or how she could find her place in a world that had rejected her from the start. But one thing was certain, she wasn't going to remain invisible. She wasn't going to keep crying in the dark. Lily got out of bed and walked to her desk. There, scattered across the surface, were her college applications and medical textbooks. She had always dreamed of becoming a doctor, of saving lives, of doing something meaningful. But for so long, that dream had seemed out of reach. As if it were something meant for other people who had the support and the resources to make it happen. But what if, just for once, she allowed herself to believe in her own potential? What if she was capable of more than what she had been told? Her fingers brushed over the papers, tracing the familiar paths of her aspirations. The dream of becoming a doctor hadn't died. In fact, it had grown stronger in the silence of her life, in the void left by her family's rejection. The dream had become her only constant, the one thing that had kept her going when everything else seemed like a losing battle. Lily wasn't going to stop now. She wasn't going to let her past define her future. She sat down at her desk and began to fill out the application for medical school. She poured all her frustration, her pain, her ambition into each word, every sentence carrying the weight of everything she had endured. She could almost feel her mother's presence with her, a silent encouragement to keep pushing, to keep fighting for something bigger than herself. When she finished the application, Lily leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly, a small but significant smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She didn't know if she would ever be able to forgive her family for the way they had treated her, but at that moment, she realized that forgiveness wasn't something she had to give them. It was something she needed to give herself. She wasn't the forgotten child anymore. She wasn't the orphan in her own home. Lily Montgomery was going to make a name for herself. She was going to become the woman her mother had believed her to be, the woman she had always wanted to be. And no matter how cold and indifferent her family remained, she was going to show them that she was worth more than they had ever known. She was going to save lives. And in the process, she was going to save herself. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, Lily felt the stirrings of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to light the path ahead. She had made the first step toward freedom, toward healing. And that was all she needed. The darkness no longer had a hold on her. The days that followed seemed to stretch on endlessly for Lily. But something had shifted within her. The small flicker of hope had ignited a determination she hadn't known she was capable of. Each morning, she woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that her path wouldn't be easy, and that the shadow of her family's rejection would always linger over her, but she was no longer afraid of it. She had faced the hardest part, looking at herself in the mirror and accepting that she was worthy of the life she had always dreamed of. She threw herself into her studies, devoting herself to her medical coursework with an intensity that surprised even her. There was no room for distractions anymore. The pain of her past, while still present, had transformed into fuel for her ambition. Each textbook, each clinical session, each late-night study group was a step closer to the future she was building, one where she didn't need anyone's validation except her own. Her family's indifference had forced her to become independent, but now it became the fire that kept her moving forward. No longer did she feel small and unseen. Now, she was determined to rise above the hurt and prove that she could be someone they could never ignore. Months passed, and Lily found herself excelling in her medical program. Her professors took notice of her relentless work ethic, and her peers began to look to her for advice. She was becoming the doctor she had always hoped to be: skilled, compassionate, and confident. She saved lives, not just in the hospital, but in the quiet moments when she offered support to those who were struggling, the ones who, like her, felt invisible in the world. Despite the distance she had placed between herself and her family, Lily's thoughts often wandered back to them. She didn't know why she still longed for their approval. But a part of her couldn't let go of the hope that one day, things might be different. Maybe her father, her aunts, her uncles, maybe they would finally see her, really see her, and recognize the woman she had become. It was during her third year of medical school that the unexpected happened. Lily received a call from the family lawyer, a name she had long since stopped hearing in her daily life. She had assumed they would never reach out again, and she certainly hadn't expected to hear from anyone on her father's side of the family. The lawyer informed her that her grandfather, the one who had been the most critical and distant of all, had requested an appearance on a national television show. At first, Lily thought the lawyer had made a mistake. Why would her grandfather, who had never acknowledged her existence beyond his occasional scorn, want to speak to her? She was hardly part of the family in his eyes, and she had long since let go of any hope of reconciling with them. But the lawyer's words kept echoing in her mind. Your grandfather has requested you. He has something important to say. Her heart skipped a beat. She had heard rumors about her grandfather's declining health over the years, but she had never allowed herself to feel sympathy for him. After everything that had happened, how could she? He was the one who had treated her like she was invisible, the one who had been the hardest to win over. How could she possibly find the strength to face him now, after so many years of neglect? And yet, there was something inside her, a part of her that still longed for closure. For the answers that had always eluded her. Maybe it wasn't about forgiveness. Maybe it was about understanding why he had never accepted her, why he had been so cold. She didn't need his approval anymore, but a part of her still wanted to know why. Why had he let her mother's death be the reason he turned his back on his granddaughter? The show would air in a week. Lily thought about it constantly, torn between the emotions that flooded her every time she thought about facing her family. She had lived without them for so long that the idea of returning to that space, even for one moment, felt foreign. But as the days passed, she began to feel a sense of resolve. She would go. Not for them, not to find forgiveness or closure, but for herself. She had spent so many years fighting against the hurt they had caused her. Now she would go to face them, face him. As the woman she had become. She had grown strong, capable, independent. She didn't need to be their little girl anymore. But perhaps this was her chance to show them who she had become. And more importantly, to show herself that she was beyond their rejection. The night of the television appearance arrived. Lily sat in front of her vanity, staring at her reflection. She wore a simple yet elegant outfit, a soft, cream-colored blouse and dark trousers. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and her makeup was minimal. She had no desire to impress anyone tonight. All she wanted was to be seen. As she walked into the studio, her grandfather was already seated in front of the camera, his weathered face hard and cold. He looked nothing like the man she remembered, nothing like the towering figure of her childhood nightmares. Time had taken its toll, and she saw the frailty in his posture, the decline in his health that had been rumored. But despite the physical changes, the emotional distance still remained. He did not look at her when she entered. The host of the show, a friendly, charismatic woman named Andrea, greeted Lily with a warm smile and gestured for her to sit beside her grandfather. Lily felt the weight of the moment, the air thick with unspoken words. Lily, thank you for joining us tonight, Andrea said. I'm sure this is a difficult moment for you, but we are so grateful that you're here. Lily nodded, her voice steady, but her heart raced. The lights from the cameras seemed blinding, and she felt her chest tighten. But she refused to let it show. She was no longer the frightened little girl who hid in the corner of her family's house. The interview began, with Andrea asking gentle questions, allowing her grandfather to speak first. He was slow, his words measured, but there was an unfamiliar tremor in his voice as he spoke. He spoke about his regrets, his mistakes. And then, when the moment came, he turned toward Lily slowly, almost hesitantly, and spoke the words that would change everything. Lily, he began, his voice faltering. I was wrong. I was wrong to turn my back on you. I failed you, and I can never take that back. I've watched you from afar, and I've seen the woman you've become. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Lily's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, she couldn't speak. The years of anger, pain, and longing collided within her, but she held her ground. She didn't cry. She didn't reach out for his apology. She simply nodded, her voice steady, though her chest tightened. "I've learned to forgive, grandfather," she said quietly, her eyes meeting his. "But I didn't need your approval to become who I am today. I did it on my own." And with that, Lily Montgomery finally took the first step toward truly healing. She didn't need their validation. She didn't need their love. She had found her place in the world, and it was one where she had nothing to prove to anyone, not even to her family. The applause from the audience was deafening. But Lily sat still, her heart calm. She had come full circle. She had faced the past, and now she was ready to let go. The audience's applause rang in Lily's ears, but it felt distant. Almost surreal. She could hear the faint cheers, the applause, but it all seemed to wash over her, as though she were floating just above it all. She had expected the tears, the rush of emotions, maybe even a feeling of vindication. But instead, she felt an unexpected sense of peace, a deep, quiet calm. Lily turned slightly to look at her grandfather. His face, once so hard and unyielding, now held a softness she had never seen before. His eyes were moist, the weight of years of regret hanging in the air between them. But there was no anger in her anymore. No burning need for revenge or retribution. For the first time in her life, Lily understood that forgiveness didn't need to be an exchange. It wasn't about what the other person had done to earn it. It was about what she was willing to release within herself to move forward. "I'm glad you're sorry," Lily said, her voice steady but soft. "But I don't need you to fix anything. I've already fixed myself." Her grandfather blinked, taken aback by her words. The tears that had gathered in his eyes glistened, and for a moment, Lily saw him not as the stern, cold figure from her childhood, but as a frail, regretful man who had never known how to love his own family. His silence spoke volumes, and Lily realized that the years of distance had carved deep scars in him, too. But she wasn't the little girl anymore, desperate for someone to love her, desperate to be seen. She had learned the hard way that her worth did not depend on anyone else's acknowledgement. Her strength had come from within, from years of silence, of pushing forward alone. That strength was hers to keep. Andrea, the host, broke the silence gently, directing the conversation to a lighter note, but Lily felt no urge to continue the discussion. The truth had been spoken. The apology had been given. The healing, though, was something she had already started long before this moment. As the interview wrapped up, Lily stood to leave, but before she could exit the studio, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned, surprised to see her father standing in the doorway, his usual expression unreadable. He hadn't come in during the interview, not even to show any support. But now he was here, his posture stiff, his gaze flickering nervously between her and the ground. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily's breath caught. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Her father had never said those words to her. The words "I'm proud of you" had never been part of their relationship. She had grown up with silence, with coldness, never hearing the praise or affection that most children received from their parents. But Lily, after everything, knew one thing: she didn't need it anymore. She had spent so many years hoping for these words, aching for them. But now they felt distant, like something she had long since let go of. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice even. "But it's not your approval I need. It's my own. And I've already given that to myself." Her father stared at her for a long moment, as if searching for something. His face remained unreadable, but Lily could see the flicker of something in his eyes, regret, perhaps, or maybe realization. Then, just as quietly as he had spoken, he nodded, as if acknowledging the truth in her words. I hope you find peace, Lily," he said, his voice tinged with a sadness that was too late to change anything. But it was the first time he had ever acknowledged her pain. And, for Lily, that was enough. She gave him a small nod and turned to leave. The weight she had carried for so long seemed lighter with each step she took. She had spent years of her life trying to earn her family's love and acceptance, trying to be something she wasn't for them to see her. But now she was free from that burden. When Lily stepped out of the studio into the cool night air, she felt a deep sense of relief. She had faced the ghosts of her past and spoken her truth. It didn't matter what her family thought of her anymore. They didn't define who she was. She was Lily Montgomery, the woman who had saved lives, who had built her own future, who had walked through the fire of rejection and came out stronger. And she didn't need anyone's approval to know that she was enough. The bright city lights reflected in the window as she stepped into her car. The hum of the engine was a steady, reassuring sound. As she drove through the streets of New York, she felt a quiet peace in her heart, knowing that the journey of healing wasn't about making others see her, it was about making herself whole. For the first time in a long while, Lily smiled, not because of anything her family had given her, but because of everything she had given herself. The past was behind her, and the future was hers to shape. Lily had become the woman she had always dreamed of. She had made her own way in the world. And that, she realized, was the greatest gift of all. The weeks following the television interview were a blur for Lily. She had expected a sense of relief, a catharsis, but what she felt was something different, a quiet, steady contentment. There was no dramatic shift in her life, no sudden flood of love and acceptance from her family. But that was the point, wasn't it? She had learned not to rely on them for validation. She no longer felt the need to prove anything to anyone, especially to those who had never given her the chance to prove her worth in the first place. Her days continued as they always had, filled with hospital rounds, long hours at the clinic, and late-night study sessions. But now, Lily moved through the world with a different energy. There was no longer a weight pressing down on her chest, no lingering resentment or bitterness. She had given herself the freedom to move on, and it was a freedom she had never known before. Her relationship with her grandfather remained unchanged. After the interview, he had sent a card, simple and sincere, with a message that read, "I'm glad we had that moment. I hope you can find peace." Lily had kept it in her drawer, a reminder that healing didn't always come in the form she expected. The years of pain couldn't be erased with a few words, but those words had been a starting point. They had been his attempt to reach across the distance he had created, and while it didn't change the past, it gave Lily the closure she hadn't known she needed. Her father, too, had stayed in contact, though more out of obligation than genuine affection. He had sent her an email after the interview, acknowledging her success as a doctor, offering a congratulatory tone that felt almost out of place. It was the first time in her life he had mentioned her achievements, and Lily found herself reading the email with a quiet detachment. "I see you're making a name for yourself," it said. "I never doubted you could do it. I just wish I had been there more for you." Lily closed her laptop and let out a slow breath. She didn't know what it meant, this acknowledgement. She had always longed for it, but now that it was here, it felt strangely hollow. She had moved beyond that longing, beyond waiting for her father's approval. She didn't need it anymore. She had built her own sense of worth, a worth that was entirely her own. But the feeling of healing, of letting go, was more profound than she could have imagined. It wasn't just the absence of pain, it was the presence of something stronger, something more resilient. She had become someone who could stand on her own, who didn't need anyone to validate her existence. And for the first time, she was truly at peace with herself. One afternoon, as Lily walked through the hospital halls, a nurse approached her with a smile. "Dr. Montgomery," the nurse said, "we have a new case for you, an emergency. A young woman, about your age, in critical condition after a car accident." Lily's heart rate quickened as she followed the nurse to the emergency room. It was a routine day, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was different today. As they reached the patient, Lily's breath caught in her throat. The woman on the operating table was unconscious, her face bruised and battered. But as Lily leaned in closer to examine her, something familiar caught her eye. It was a locket around the woman's neck. The kind of locket Lily had once seen in a photograph, her mother's. Her mind raced. Could this woman be connected to her past? But she didn't have time to dwell on it now. She had a patient to save. Lily's hands moved with precision as she led the team through the procedure. Her focus was unwavering, and despite the urgency of the situation, her thoughts remained calm. The hours seemed to slip by as she worked tirelessly to stabilize the patient. Finally, when the surgery was over and the woman was moved to recovery, Lily took a moment to catch her breath. She felt a sense of accomplishment, as always, but this time there was a quiet satisfaction, a deeper sense of peace. She had saved another life, just as she had always dreamed of doing. It was only after the team had left the room and Lily had gone to check on the woman's progress that she had the chance to look at the locket more closely. She opened it carefully, her hands trembling ever so slightly. Inside was a picture of a young girl, the same age Lily had been when her mother had passed away. The resemblance was striking. Lily's heart raced as she read the small engraving beneath the picture, Sarah Montgomery. She had never seen the locket before, but she knew it was her mother's. It was an heirloom, something Sarah had cherished. The woman in the bed was not just any patient. She was a part of Lily's past, someone who had been lost to time, someone connected to her mother. The revelation sent a shiver down her spine. She didn't know how or why this woman had come into her life, but it felt like fate, like some kind of cosmic pull that had brought them together. As the woman stirred, groaning softly, Lily's eyes softened. She had been through so much. And yet, here she was, alive, still fighting. There was a moment of realization. A feeling of connection that Lily couldn't quite explain. She wasn't just a healer of the body. She had become a healer of her own soul, and now, she was standing at the threshold of healing another's. The patient's eyes fluttered open, and Lily leaned over her, speaking gently. "You're safe now. You're going to be all right." The woman's gaze was unfocused at first, but as her vision cleared, she seemed to recognize something familiar in Lily's face. "I know you," the woman whispered, her voice hoarse. You're Sarah's daughter, aren't you?" Lily's heart skipped a beat. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I am." The woman smiled faintly, tears welling in her eyes. "I've been looking for you for so long." Lily took her hand gently, feeling the weight of the moment settle around them. She didn't know who this woman was or how she had come into her life. But one thing was clear, this was more than just a coincidence. This was a new chapter in her story, a story that was still unfolding. In the days that followed, Lily learned that the woman, whose name was Eleanor, had been a childhood friend of her mother's. They had been close before her mother's death, but their paths had diverged. Eleanor had gone through her own struggles, but through some twist of fate, their lives had collided once again. As Lily sat by her bedside, listening to Eleanor's stories of her mother, she realized something profound. The healing that had begun with Lily's own journey was not just for her, it was something she was meant to share. She was meant to connect with others, to heal not just their bodies, but their hearts, just as she had healed her own. And in this moment, Lily finally understood what her mother had always known. Healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about connecting, about loving, and about never giving up, no matter how lost or broken the world may seem. Lily had found her true purpose, and in that, she had found herself. As days passed, Lily's bond with Eleanor deepened. Their conversations were filled with memories of Sarah, stories of her kindness, her laughter, and the dreams she had shared with Eleanor. It was as though, through Eleanor, Lily was reconnecting with a part of her mother that she had lost so many years ago. Every word, every laugh, every story felt like a piece of the puzzle of her past falling into place. Eleanor's recovery was slow but steady. Lily spent time by her side, not only as a doctor but also as a listener, offering comfort and guidance. For the first time in her life, Lily felt she was living out her mother's legacy, not just in her medical work, but in the way she cared for others, the way she brought healing to those around her. Eleanor's gratitude for Lily's care was overwhelming, and Lily, in turn, was grateful for the opportunity to help someone who had known her mother so intimately. It was a bond that filled the gaps in her heart that her family's indifference had once created. One evening, as they sat together in the hospital room, Eleanor turned to Lily. Her eyes filled with both wonder and sadness. "You know," she said softly, "your mother was always so proud of you." She talked about you all the time. She knew you would grow up to be something amazing. Lily's throat tightened, the familiar ache of longing creeping back in. I never got the chance to tell her I loved her enough, she whispered, barely able to keep the tears at bay. You didn't need to, Eleanor said, her voice steady. She knew. You were her heart, Lily. She knew you loved her with everything you had. And now you're here, making the world a better place, just as she would have wanted. Lily smiled through the tears, feeling the weight of those words. For so long, she had struggled with the pain of losing her mother, of never getting to say goodbye. But now, with Eleanor's words, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. Her mother had always believed in her. And now Lily could believe in herself too. In the weeks that followed, Eleanor made incredible progress. She was able to walk, talk, and even share more stories about Sarah's life. Lily learned so much about her mother through Eleanor's memories. The woman who had raised her was not just the loving, gentle mother Lily remembered, but a woman full of dreams, strength, and a quiet courage that Lily now admired deeply. One afternoon, as they sat in the garden outside the hospital, Eleanor turned to Lily with a thoughtful expression. I never told you how Sarah helped me when I was at my lowest. She was always there for me, even when I felt like I had nothing left to give. She had a way of making you believe you could do anything, like you were never alone. Lily's heart swelled. Her mother had been a force in the lives of everyone she touched, but it wasn't until now, through Eleanor's stories, that Lily truly understood the depth of her mother's impact. Eleanor paused before continuing. You know, I think that's the way you're going to heal the world. Just like your mother did. Not just with your hands, but with your heart. You have that same gift. Lily looked at Eleanor, the woman who had once been a stranger and now felt like a sister, a friend, a guide. I'm just doing my job, Lily replied, a modest smile tugging at her lips. But deep inside, she knew that Eleanor was right. It wasn't just the medicine, the treatments, or the surgeries. It was the care, the empathy, the ability to connect with people on a deeper level that made her a healer. And that, more than any skill or degree, was the legacy her mother had left her. As the weeks turned into months, Lily found herself more and more involved in Eleanor's recovery process. She was no longer just her doctor, but a friend. Someone who could help Eleanor rebuild her life, just as she had rebuilt her own. The two of them began working together on a project in memory of Sarah, creating a small foundation that would provide support for those who, like Eleanor, had lost their way but needed a second chance. It was a way to honor Sarah's memory, to carry on the work she had begun, and to help others heal, just as Lily had learned to heal herself. One late afternoon, as Lily sat at her desk reviewing medical records, her phone rang. It was her father. Lily? His voice sounded hesitant, almost unsure. I wanted to apologize. For everything. For the years of neglect. I know I haven't been the father you needed. But I want you to know that I see you now. I see the woman you've become. And I'm proud of you. I don't know how to make up for the lost time, but I'd like to try. Lily sat back in her chair, the weight of his words settling over her. She hadn't expected this call, not after all these years. Her father had never been good at expressing his emotions, let alone offering an apology. But here it was, the acknowledgement she had once longed for, the words she had needed to hear for so long. She took a deep breath, her fingers resting on the edge of her desk. She thought about everything she had been through, everything she had overcome. She thought about her mother's love, Eleanor's kindness, and the strength she had found within herself. And she realized, in that moment, that the apology wasn't the end of her healing, it was just another part of it. She had forgiven him long ago, not because of what he had done, but because she had learned to forgive herself. I appreciate that, Dad, Lily said quietly. But I don't need your apology. I've already found peace. You don't have to make up for the past. We can just start fresh, if that's what you want. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When her father spoke again, his voice was softer, more sincere. I do want that. I just want you to know that I'm here now. And I'm proud of you, Lily. You've done more than I could ever ask. Lily smiled, her heart light. She had heard what she needed to hear. She wasn't waiting for approval anymore. She was proud of herself, and that was enough. Later that evening, after the phone call ended, Lily found herself standing by the window of her apartment, looking out at the city that had been both her challenge and her home. The lights twinkled like stars, and she felt, for the first time in so many years, that everything was exactly as it should be. She was no longer searching for something outside of herself to make her whole. She was whole. Her journey had been long and painful, but it had also been a journey of discovery, of learning to love herself, to forgive, and to heal. And now, standing on the other side of it all, she knew one thing for certain: she was enough. The future was hers to shape, and with the love and strength of her mother in her heart, Lily was ready to face whatever came next with courage, compassion, and an unwavering belief in herself. The days after her conversation with her father passed in a blur of quiet reflection and unexpected calm. Lily found herself revisiting memories she had long buried: her mother's laughter, the quiet afternoons they spent together, the way Sarah had always known exactly what to say to make her feel like she was never truly alone. It was strange, but with her father's words hanging in the air, Lily felt an unexpected sense of closure. The work she had started with Eleanor on the foundation blossomed. It became her new passion. Her way of honoring Sarah's memory while also building something tangible and lasting. The foundation's mission was clear: to offer support to individuals who had faced trauma and loss, helping them rebuild their lives in the same way Sarah had once helped Eleanor, and in the same way Lily had learned to heal herself. It was both an extension of Lily's healing journey and a tribute to the love her mother had given to everyone around her. As the foundation gained traction, Lily found herself speaking at small events and fundraisers, sharing her story and the stories of others who had found hope and healing. The more she shared, the more she realized how much her experience could help others. She wasn't just a doctor, she was someone who had lived through pain and emerged stronger, and people needed to hear that. It wasn't just about medical knowledge, it was about emotional resilience, about finding hope when everything seemed lost. Her work in the hospital continued, and she threw herself into each patient she treated. But it wasn't just about physical recovery anymore. Every patient she encountered, every story they shared, reminded her of the importance of emotional healing. She began implementing more holistic approaches to care, ensuring that each patient not only received the medical treatment they needed, but also the emotional and psychological support to help them heal fully. Through all of this, Eleanor remained by her side. They grew closer, their relationship deepening from the bond formed in the hospital room to something more familial. Eleanor's recovery was remarkable, and as she grew stronger, she became more involved in the foundation's work as well. Together, they organized support groups for those who had lost loved ones, for people struggling with addiction, for those trying to overcome their own personal demons. The foundation became a beacon of hope in the community, and Lily knew that this was her true calling. But amidst all the busy days of work and giving back, Lily realized there was still a piece of herself that she hadn't fully confronted. It was the part of her that longed for a different kind of connection, a connection with someone who saw her for who she truly was, someone who could love her without the baggage of her family's past. She hadn't thought about it much. After all, she had spent so much time working on herself, healing her wounds, and building her career that the idea of a romantic relationship had always felt secondary. But now, with her life settling into a rhythm, Lily realized that there was a part of her heart that still yearned to be loved. Not just for what she did, but for who she was. And then, as if the universe was listening, a man entered her life in the most unexpected way. His name was Max, an old friend from her medical school days, someone she had admired from afar but never truly gotten to know. He had been a fellow student, someone with a quiet, steady presence that had always intrigued her. He had been away for several years, working as a trauma surgeon in another city, but had recently returned to New York. Their first meeting again was coincidental, a chance encounter at a conference on medical innovation, where they were both invited to speak. Max was different from anyone she had dated before. He didn't offer her empty compliments or try to impress her with his achievements. Instead, he listened. He asked questions. He made her feel seen, not for her accomplishments, but for the person she had become. They spent hours talking, laughing, and reconnecting in a way that felt natural, as if they had known each other forever. He respected her boundaries and her work, but he also challenged her in ways that pushed her to grow even further. As their friendship deepened, Lily found herself more and more drawn to him. But there was hesitation too. She had spent so many years guarding her heart, building walls to protect herself from the hurt and disappointment she had experienced in the past. She had learned to live without the approval of her family, without the need for validation from anyone. But now, with Max, she felt something different, a warmth, a trust, a desire to share herself with someone again. One evening, after a long day of work at the hospital and a meeting with the foundation, Max invited her to dinner. It was nothing fancy, just a small, intimate restaurant in the heart of the city, but it felt significant. As they sat across from each other, talking about their lives, their passions, their hopes for the future, Lily felt a quiet peace wash over her. She wasn't just a doctor anymore. She wasn't just the daughter of her mother. She wasn't just a woman trying to prove her worth to a family that had never understood her. She was Lily, and that was enough. Max reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His touch was gentle, but there was something about the way he held her hand that felt like he was offering her something she hadn't realized she had been missing: acceptance. No judgments. No expectations. Just the simplicity of connection. "I'm glad you're here, Lily," Max said softly, his eyes meeting hers. "I don't think I ever told you this, but I've always admired you. Not just for your work, but for who you are. For the way you've turned your pain into something good. That's not something a lot of people can do." Lily smiled, her heart full. "I've had to learn how to find peace with who I am. I think that's the hardest part, accepting yourself when everyone else has failed to do so." Max's gaze softened. "I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you want me to." The words were simple, but they held so much weight. For the first time, Lily realized that she didn't need to carry the burden of her past alone. Max didn't need to fix her or save her. He was simply there, offering her something she had longed for, a love that didn't require her to be anything other than herself. As they shared a quiet moment, Lily felt her heart open in a way she hadn't allowed in years. She wasn't just healing for herself anymore. She was healing for the future, for the possibility of love, for the chance to build something beautiful with someone who saw her for everything she was: flaws, scars, and all. The past would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined her. She was no longer the forgotten child. She was a woman who had learned to live fully, to embrace her own strength, and to trust that, no matter what came her way, she was worthy of love and happiness. As they walked out of the restaurant together, hand in hand, Lily realized that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about embracing the journey, the messy, beautiful, imperfect journey, and trusting that with every step forward, she was becoming more of the person she was always meant to be. As the weeks passed, Lily and Max grew closer, their connection deepening with every conversation, every shared moment of laughter, and every quiet night spent together. Their relationship felt easy, natural, something Lily had never expected to find after everything she had been through. Max was steady, patient, and genuinely kind, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos she had grown accustomed to in her life. But there was something about him that made her feel safe, understood, and cherished. For Lily, it was a strange feeling, letting someone in after years of being closed off, after years of building walls to protect herself. She had spent so long healing from her family's neglect and from the emotional scars that came with being invisible in her own home. The thought of truly letting someone see her, of allowing herself to be vulnerable, terrified her. But with Max, it didn't feel like a risk. It felt like an invitation to trust, to let go, and to finally allow herself to receive the love she had been denying herself for so long. Max was always there for her. Whether it was supporting her during a particularly difficult case at the hospital, attending foundation meetings with her, or simply sitting with her in silence after a long day. He didn't push her. Never made her feel like she needed to rush into anything, and that gave her the space to grow at her own pace. He respected her independence, her drive. But he also reminded her that it was okay to lean on someone, that she didn't have to carry everything alone. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of her apartment, the city skyline stretched out before them, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Max handed her a glass of wine and leaned back in his chair, his eyes on her as she stared out at the lights below. "You know, I've been thinking a lot lately," Max began, his voice casual but serious, "about what you've been doing with the foundation and the work you're doing at the hospital. You're changing lives, Lily. You're making a difference in ways that most people can only dream of." Lily smiled softly, her gaze still fixed on the view. "I'm just doing my job. I'm just trying to help people, one person at a time." "That's exactly it," Max said, his voice warm. "You're not just saving people's lives. You're changing the way they see themselves. You're showing them that they're worth saving. And that's something incredible." Lily turned to look at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I never imagined it would turn out like this. I mean, I never thought I'd be where I am now. I thought I was just going to be invisible forever. But now, with the foundation, with everything I'm doing, I finally feel like I'm doing something that matters." "You've always mattered, Lily," Max said, his tone gentle but unwavering, "even when you didn't believe it. And now, the whole world gets to see that." The sincerity in his words hit her deeply. Max didn't just see her for her accomplishments, he saw her for the person she had become. The woman who had fought through years of pain and rejection to stand tall. He saw her strength, her resilience, and, most importantly, her heart. Lily felt a lump form in her throat, and she turned away for a moment, blinking back the unexpected tears that threatened to fall. She had spent so many years feeling like she wasn't enough, like she would never be worthy of love, of success, or of happiness. But now, with Max by her side, she realized that she had always been enough. She had always been worthy of everything she had worked so hard for. Max reached across the table, his hand gently brushing hers. "You don't have to do this alone anymore," he said softly. "I'm here, Lily. And I'm not going anywhere." Lily's heart ached at the sincerity in his words. She had spent so long trying to heal herself, to rebuild her life from the ground up. But she realized now that healing didn't always have to be a solitary journey. With Max, she could share her life, share her love, and share her dreams. She didn't have to keep everything locked away anymore. She could be open. She could be loved. And in turn, she could love with all her heart. "I'm starting to believe that," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I'm starting to believe I'm worthy of all of this." Max squeezed her hand gently. "You've always been worthy, Lily. Always." That night, as they sat together in the quiet of her apartment, Lily finally allowed herself to feel the peace that had eluded her for so long. She had found a place where she didn't have to prove herself anymore, a place where she could be herself, without fear of rejection or judgment. She had found love real. Unconditional love, not because of what she had accomplished, but because of who she was. In the months that followed, their relationship continued to blossom. Max was everything Lily had ever needed, steadfast, loving, and supportive. And as their bond grew stronger, so did her belief in herself. She knew now that healing wasn't just about what she had done for others, but also about what she had done for herself. She had learned to embrace her past, to forgive her family for their shortcomings, and to open her heart to the possibility of something beautiful and new. Lily's work with the foundation flourished, and with Max's encouragement, she began expanding her efforts, reaching more people and touching more lives than she had ever imagined. They traveled together, attending conferences and speaking on panels about emotional healing and trauma recovery, spreading their message of hope to people all over the country. It wasn't just about medicine anymore. It was about giving people the tools to heal from the inside out, to rebuild their lives just as she had done with her own. She had become a living testament to the power of resilience, to the idea that no matter how broken we feel, we can always rebuild ourselves. We can always heal. And through it all, Lily knew one thing for certain: she had finally found her place in the world. She had found peace, love, and a purpose greater than anything she had ever imagined. And with Max by her side, she knew that anything was possible. For the first time in her life, Lily Montgomery was exactly where she was meant to be. She wasn't just healing the world. She was living it fully, openly, and with a heart full of hope. As the seasons changed, Lily and Max's relationship deepened, and their lives intertwined more seamlessly with each passing day. Lily's success in both her medical career and her work with the foundation began to take on a life of its own. What had started as a small, personal project had blossomed into something far greater than she ever imagined. It wasn't just about saving lives anymore, it was about empowering people to take control of their healing, to rewrite their stories, and to embrace the possibilities of a future they thought were closed off. Lily often thought back to the days when she felt so invisible, when she thought that her worth was defined by the judgment of others. She couldn't help but marvel at how far she had come. With Max's support, she had slowly learned to shed the heavy cloak of insecurity, to embrace the woman she had always been beneath the layers of pain and self-doubt. Max never tried to change her, never asked her to be anyone other than the woman she was. He simply loved her fully and without reservation, and that love had become a powerful force in her life. One afternoon, as they stood on the balcony of their apartment overlooking the city, Max turned to her with a thoughtful expression. It had been a busy few months, and Lily had been working nonstop on various foundation initiatives. Yet, despite the whirlwind of activity around them, they always found moments like this, quiet, private moments where they could reconnect and simply be together. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Max began, his voice warm and contemplative. "About the future. About us." Lily looked at him, her heart fluttering with curiosity. She had come to treasure these moments with Max, where he would share his thoughts, his dreams, and his hopes for their lives together. There was something so comforting in his steady presence, and it had begun to feel like they were building something that could withstand the tests of time. "What do you mean?" Lily asked, her voice gentle. Max smiled, his eyes meeting hers. "I know we've been through a lot separately, and we've each had our own journey. But I can't help but think that maybe it's time for a new chapter together. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Lily. I want to build something with you. Something more than what we have now. Something that lasts." Lily's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't a proposal, not yet, but the weight of his words hung in the air. For so long, she had been afraid of love, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of repeating the mistakes of her past. But with Max, everything felt different. It felt like she was no longer holding herself back, no longer guarding her heart so fiercely that she missed out on the love that was standing right in front of her. "Max, Lily started, her voice trembling with emotion. "I never thought I would find something like this. I never thought I'd find someone who sees me the way you do, who loves me without wanting to change me. But I want that too. I want to build something with you. Something that's real, something that grows with us." Max's eyes softened, and he took her hands in his. "We've both been through our own journeys, Lily. And now, I want to walk beside you on yours. For as long as you'll let me." The moment was so simple, so beautiful in its sincerity, that Lily's heart swelled with love. She had spent so many years trying to navigate life on her own, convinced that she had to do everything herself. But here, with Max, she realized that the most beautiful things in life were meant to be shared. Love, happiness, and healing weren't solitary pursuits. They were shared experiences, journeys taken together. As the weeks passed, Lily and Max continued to build their future. They talked about everything, about their hopes, their fears, their dreams for the future. They discussed the foundation, their vision for it, and how they could continue to help people. Lily was overwhelmed by the idea of expanding their efforts even further, maybe opening clinics in underserved communities or creating more programs for emotional and psychological healing. Max was right by her side every step of the way, encouraging her, pushing her to think bigger, and believing in her abilities more than she ever believed in herself. Lily's life, once filled with shadows of doubt and loneliness, was now bursting with possibilities. She had found not only a career that fulfilled her, but a love that grounded her. She had found acceptance, not just from the world around her, but from herself. She had learned that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about nurturing what was already whole and learning to embrace all parts of who she was. And so, with each passing day, she allowed herself to dream bigger than ever before. She dreamt of a future where her foundation could reach even more people, a future where the work she had started could transform entire communities. She dreamt of a life filled with laughter, love, and the kind of peace she had never thought possible. And most importantly, she dreamt of a future with Max, a future where they stood side by side, ready to face whatever came their way together. One day, as they sat on the porch of their apartment, watching the sun set over the city, Max turned to her, his gaze serious. "Lily," he began, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "I've been thinking about this for a while now. I want you to know that I'm not just here because of what we've built together. I'm here because I love you. And I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel alone again." Lily's heart raced. She had heard the words, but something about hearing them in this moment, with the sun dipping below the horizon and the city around them falling into a quiet stillness, made her heart swell with a love she had never imagined was possible. Max reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. He opened it slowly, revealing a delicate ring, simple yet elegant. "Lily Montgomery," he said softly, his voice full of tenderness. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled Lily's eyes as she looked at Max, her heart bursting with a love that was more than she had ever dared to hope for. She hadn't just healed from her past. She had found something even more precious, someone to share her future with. Someone who loved her for who she was, not for what she had achieved or what others expected of her. And that, she realized, was the most beautiful kind of love. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, I will." As Max slid the ring onto her finger, Lily knew that the future they had talked about, the future she had once thought was out of reach, was now within her grasp. They had built something beautiful together, and now they were ready to build an even greater future, hand in hand. The love Lily had once thought was out of her reach was now her reality, and she was ready to embrace it fully, openly. And with a heart full of gratitude for everything she had overcome and everything that was still to come. The days following Max's proposal felt like a whirlwind, a beautiful blur of anticipation and joy. Lily's heart was full in a way it had never been before, and every moment felt like a promise of something new, something wonderfully unknown. She had come so far, from the girl who once felt invisible to the woman who was now cherished, supported, and ready to build the life of her dreams. They spent the next few weeks navigating the excitement of their engagement, discussing the future, and, of course, planning their wedding. It was nothing extravagant. Lily had never been one for flashy displays, but it was everything she had always dreamed of. A small ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family, in a quiet garden filled with blooming flowers. It was simple, but it was theirs. For Lily, the planning process was symbolic of something much deeper. It wasn't just about organizing a wedding. It was about stepping into a new chapter of her life, one where love wasn't something she had to fight for, but something she could simply accept. It was about creating a future with someone who understood her, someone who had supported her through all the years of healing, and someone who was willing to walk beside her, no matter what came next. As the days went by, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her that she had never known before. The emotional turbulence of her past had given way to something steadier, something more grounded. She found herself smiling more often, laughing more freely, and sharing her life more openly with those who had always stood by her side. It was a strange, almost magical feeling, like she was finally living the life she had always wanted, one full of love and connection. Max, as always, was by her side every step of the way. He was patient and supportive, never rushing her, but always encouraging her to embrace the joy that was unfolding around them. Their relationship had deepened even further in the months leading up to their wedding, and Lily was amazed at how easily they complemented each other. They didn't just love each other. They understood each other in ways no one else did. Their engagement was a celebration of all the love and growth they had experienced together. But it also served as a reminder of how far Lily had come. She had worked so hard to heal from the pain of her past, to reclaim her sense of self-worth, and now, with Max, she could finally enjoy the fruits of her labor. She had spent so many years trying to prove something to her family, trying to earn their approval. But now she realized that she didn't need anyone's validation but her own. And Max had never asked her to prove anything. He simply loved her, just as she was. The wedding day arrived with a perfect calmness that matched the peace Lily felt inside. The sun shone brightly, and the garden where the ceremony would take place looked even more beautiful than she had imagined. Her best friends, Eleanor, and a small group of close family and colleagues gathered around. Each person there because they truly cared for Lily and supported her journey. Lily stood at the altar, looking out at the familiar faces that had been with her through thick and thin. She saw Max waiting for her, his smile warm and steady, his eyes filled with love. For the first time, she realized that the life she had worked so hard to build on her own terms, without the approval of her family, was exactly what she had always needed. It was real, and it was hers. As she walked down the aisle, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only Max in focus. He looked at her with such tenderness, such adoration, that Lily felt as if every moment of her life had led to this. She was walking toward the future, toward the man who had become her partner in every sense of the word. When they exchanged vows, Lily felt as if she were speaking not just to Max, but to herself. She promised to love him, to stand by him, to support him through whatever life threw their way. But most of all, she promised to continue growing, to continue healing, and to keep moving forward together. She promised to honor the love they had built and to carry it with her every day for the rest of her life. Max's vows echoed the same sentiment of love, of support, and of a future built on mutual respect and understanding. His words were simple, yet profound, and in that moment, Lily realized how much she had been yearning for someone who could truly see her. Not as a project to be fixed or a burden to be carried, but as an equal, as someone worthy of love. As they were pronounced husband and wife, Lily couldn't help but feel a sense of overwhelming gratitude for everything she had overcome, for the woman she had become, and for the love that had found her when she least expected it. She kissed Max softly, the world around them dissolving into a soft blur of joy and emotion. The reception that followed was full of laughter, dancing, and speeches that celebrated not just the couple, but the journey they had taken to get here. It wasn't just about the wedding, about the flowers or the dress or the cake. It was about the love, the support, and the commitment that had carried them through. In the days that followed, Lily and Max embarked on their honeymoon, a peaceful getaway to a quiet beach where they could relax and simply enjoy each other's company. It was the perfect way to begin their new life together. As they walked along the shore, hand in hand, Lily felt an incredible sense of calm. She had finally found a place where she could be herself, truly and completely, without fear of rejection. She had built something real and lasting, something that wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval, but on the love and trust they had cultivated together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Max turned to her with a soft smile. "I love you, Lily." She looked at him, her heart full, and replied, "I love you too, Max. And I'm ready for whatever comes next." Because with him, she knew that they could face anything. Together, They had built a life that was uniquely their own. And nothing at all, could take that away. And as they walked along the beach, the waves gently crashing at their feet, Lily finally understood what it meant to be truly at peace. She had come full circle, from a place of pain and rejection to a place of love, acceptance, and healing. Her past no longer defined her. It was simply a part of the story that had shaped her into the woman she was today. And in that moment, with the man she loved by her side, Lily felt like the most whole she had ever been. She was no longer seeking approval from anyone. She had already found it in herself. As the days of their honeymoon unfolded, the world seemed to fade away for Lily and Max. They spent their mornings sipping coffee on the balcony, watching the sun rise over the ocean, and their evenings walking barefoot along the shore, the waves lapping at their feet. There was a peaceful rhythm to their days, no expectations, no rushing, just the quiet contentment of being together in this moment. Lily reveled in the simplicity of it all. For so long, her life had been defined by the weight of her past, by the struggle to prove her worth to her family, to herself, to the world. But now, as she stood at the edge of the world with Max, she realized that she had already arrived. This, right here, was where she was meant to be. And yet, as much as she enjoyed the serenity, there were moments when she couldn't help but feel a tug of anticipation for what was to come. Max was her rock, her partner in every sense of the word. But now, with their future together unfolding, there was a part of her that wanted to keep moving forward into this new chapter of their life, into new opportunities to grow together, to continue to build the life they had started. On the last evening of their honeymoon, as the sun set in a glorious burst of color, Max turned to her with a smile. His eyes, always so full of love and understanding, seemed to be searching her face as if he could read her thoughts. "You look deep in thought," he remarked, his voice playful but tender. Lily smiled back, her heart full. "I was just thinking about how much has changed in such a short time. I never imagined I'd be here with you so at peace. I never imagined this kind of life was possible." Max gently cupped her face in his hands, his gaze unwavering. "This is just the beginning, Lily. We've come a long way, but we still have so much more to do. We're building something incredible together. And I'm with you every step of the way." The sincerity in his words touched her deeply. She had always been afraid of the unknown, of what the future might hold, but with Max by her side, it no longer felt daunting. It felt like an exciting adventure waiting to be embraced. They had built a foundation, both personally and professionally, and now they were ready to take on whatever came next. After their honeymoon, they returned to New York with a renewed sense of purpose. The foundation continued to grow, and Lily found herself more invested than ever in its mission. She was still working in the hospital, saving lives and helping her patients heal. But now she also had a much deeper sense of fulfillment. The work with the foundation had become her true passion, helping people not only recover physically but emotionally as well. She had seen firsthand how trauma could affect every part of a person's life, and she was determined to offer the support that many people desperately needed. Max, too, continued to support her in every way he could, balancing his work with his commitment to the foundation and their growing plans for the future. They worked well together, their complementary strengths making them a dynamic team. There were challenges, of course, late nights, long hours, moments of uncertainty, but through it all, they stood side by side, a constant source of strength for each other. As the months passed, Lily's relationship with her family, though still distant, began to shift. She had learned to accept that her family might never fully understand her, and that was okay. She no longer needed their approval to feel whole. But she did find herself reaching out more, trying to bridge the gap that had existed for so long. There were tentative conversations with her father, small steps toward reconciling the parts of her past that had haunted her. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect, but Lily had come to realize that healing wasn't just about letting go of old wounds, it was about finding peace with them. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings for the foundation, Max came home with a surprise. He had planned a small celebration, just the two of them, a candlelit dinner, and a quiet night in. It was their way of marking another milestone in their journey. As they sat across from each other, their hands intertwined, Lily looked at Max with a soft smile. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. Max chuckled, his fingers tracing hers. "Every day. I think about how lucky I am to have found you. And how much I admire everything you've done. You've created something incredible, Lily. And I'm proud of you every single day." Lily's heart swelled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've been my anchor. You've helped me believe in myself, and you've shown me that love isn't something I have to earn. I never knew what true love looked like until I met you." Max leaned in, his voice tender. "I feel the same way. You've taught me so much about love and strength. And I promise, I'm always going to be here. I'm not going anywhere." Lily felt a rush of emotion. The life she had once dreamed of, the love she had always wanted, was right in front of her. She had spent so many years waiting for someone to give her permission to be happy, to be loved. But now, with Max by her side, she realized that the only person she needed permission from was herself. After dinner, they went for a walk, hand in hand, through the quiet streets of their neighborhood. The world around them seemed peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, Lily felt truly at peace with herself. She had created the life she wanted, not just for her career, but for her heart. She had found love, not in the grand gestures or fairy tales, but in the small, everyday moments that mattered most. Max's presence beside her felt like home. Like everything she had ever needed was right there. They were building something together, something real and lasting, and Lily knew that with him, she could face whatever the future held. Together, they would continue to heal, grow, and create a life full of love and purpose. And as they stood on the corner, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Lily realized that the journey she had once thought would be filled with endless struggles had transformed into something entirely different. It was no longer about proving herself. It was about living fully, loving deeply, and embracing the beautiful life she had built with the man who had taught her to believe in herself. As she looked up at Max, his eyes full of love and promise, she knew, without a doubt, that everything was exactly as it was meant to be. They had found their place in the world together. The months that followed were filled with a calm joy that Lily had never before experienced. She and Max continued to build their lives together, and every day felt like a new opportunity for growth, both personally and professionally. As their relationship deepened, so did Lily's connection to the world around her. Her work with the foundation flourished, and she found herself more driven than ever to make a lasting impact on the lives of those in need. There was something deeply fulfilling in knowing that she was not only changing lives through her medical career, but also through the emotional and psychological healing her foundation provided. Max, as always, was her steady support. He continued to manage his own demanding career, but he always found ways to be involved with the foundation. Whether it was assisting with strategic planning, managing the growing network of volunteers, or simply offering emotional support when things got overwhelming, he was there, by her side, through every triumph and every challenge. As their wedding day approached, the anticipation grew. Lily's heart swelled as she realized how much had changed in such a short amount of time. From the girl who had once felt rejected and invisible, to the woman who now had a partner who saw her for who she truly was, the transformation was nothing short of remarkable. She had learned to embrace love, not just from Max, but from herself. One evening, as they sat on their balcony, the warm glow of the city lights casting long shadows across the room, Max looked at Lily with a thoughtful expression. His voice was soft, filled with a tenderness that made her heart flutter. "Lily," he began, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've been thinking a lot about the future. About us." Lily smiled, the familiar feeling of warmth spreading through her chest. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "I want to build a life with you. A life that's not just about us, but about making a difference in the world. I know we've already accomplished so much, but I think we can do even more." I want us to create a legacy, one that will live on long after we're gone. Lily felt a rush of emotion. It wasn't just his words, it was the way he spoke, the way he believed in her, in them. She had spent so much of her life feeling as though she didn't belong, as if her efforts weren't enough. But now, with Max, she understood that they were capable of so much more than she had ever imagined. I've been thinking the same thing, Lily replied, her voice steady and full of conviction. We've already started something important, but there's so much more we can do. We can help people not just survive, but truly thrive. Max smiled, his eyes filled with pride. I'm glad we're on the same page. I want to do this with you, Lily, together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as a team. And just like that, Lily realized that the life they had built was just the beginning. They had created something powerful, not just a marriage, but a shared vision, a mission to change the world. They weren't just building a life of comfort and security for themselves. They were laying the foundation for a legacy that would touch lives far beyond their own. Their wedding day arrived with all the magic and beauty they had envisioned. It wasn't an extravagant affair, but it was perfect in its simplicity. The ceremony took place in the same quiet garden where they had first imagined their wedding, surrounded by close friends and family who had supported them through the years. There were no grand speeches, no over-the-top displays, just the deep, heartfelt connection that had grown between Lily and Max. As she stood at the altar, looking at Max, Lily couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. The pain, the struggles, the fear of never being enough, it had all led her to this moment. And in this moment, standing next to Max, she realized that she had never been more whole. She had found her place, not just in the world, but in his arms. Max's vows were simple, yet they spoke to everything Lily had ever longed for. Lily, from the moment I met you, I knew that you were someone special. I promised to stand by you, to support you, and to love you for as long as we both shall live. You've taught me what real love looks like, and I will never take that for granted. Lily's voice was filled with emotion as she spoke her vows. Max, you have shown me what it means to truly love, without conditions or expectations. I promise to love you, to build with you, and to face the future with you by my side, no matter what it holds. Together, we can do anything. And with those words, they were married. The crowd erupted in applause, but Lily only had eyes for Max, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. The reception that followed was filled with laughter, dancing, and joyous celebration. But amidst the festivities, Lily found a quiet moment to reflect. She had come so far, and as she looked around at the people who had supported her throughout her journey, she realized that everything she had worked for had led her to this moment. She wasn't just a healer in the traditional sense, she had healed her own heart, and now she was ready to help others heal, too. As the evening wore on, Max pulled her into a quiet corner of the garden, away from the noise and bustle of the reception. He took her hands in his gaze soft and filled with affection. Lily, he said, his voice low and serious, I want you to know something. I don't just love you for what you've accomplished or for everything you've done for others. I love you because you're you. You're strong. You're kind, and you've overcome so much. You've shown me what true resilience looks like, and I'm beyond grateful to spend the rest of my life with you. Tears filled Lily's eyes, and she hugged him tightly, her heart full. Max, I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm so thankful I found you. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Lily knew that the journey ahead was uncertain. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and times when life would test them both. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready. She wasn't just living for herself anymore, she was living for something greater. She was living for the love she had found, for the future they were building together, and for the legacy they would leave behind. In that moment, with Max by her side, Lily felt as though the world was open to them. Together, they could face anything. And she knew that no matter what came their way, they would build it together, with love, with strength, and with the unwavering belief that they were capable of changing the world. The future was bright, and for the first time in her life, Lily could see it clearly. She wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. And the journey ahead, with Max beside her, was one she was eager to embrace.